Hello everyone, I'm Andy Asher. I'm host of Let's Talk Food Travel Live Squared. We call this a variety show, but I never expected so much variety as of today, but we are packed full. It's from sex education, overcoming the fear of a change, the latest saga of a Florida whale. Mimi is in the kitchen, and what a surprise I'm in for about my favorite arcade game when I was a kid that was outlawed and banned, and there is no guarantee we will get everything done within our allotted time because the techie gurus only allow me so much. But I am excited for folks living in Tennessee because you can now watch us on Canyon Star TV. Check your cable listing there. But first,
sometimes it's nice to remember you're good at something.
that's a clip from Pinball, The Man Who Saved the Game. It was released last month in theaters on a limited basis. Now, as a kid, I loved going to the arcade, and pinball was my favorite. The story of the movie is about it being outlawed. I think it was considered back then gambling, but I will have to see the movie to find out. But interestingly, part of the debate about banning the game was whether it was a game or a skill or a game of chance. I don't have the answer. It seemed like it was a little bit of both. Like I say, I have to see the movie. And later in the show, we will talk to one of our guest experts. Her name is Dr. Lori Beth Bisbey.
So I am a registered psychologist, an accredited advanced gender, sex, and relationship diversity therapist, a sex and intimacy coach, an author, a podcast host, and the specialist resident therapist on Open House, The Great Sex Experiment, which is a television show in the UK on Channel 4. And I've been working with people for 35 years. And a large chunk of what I do is help people to create incredible relationships that have excellent sex and that don't have shame.
Lori will be here with us for a couple of weeks. And what I like, she isn't shy and she does not mince words. There is also the story of Lolita the whale.
The beloved orca, Toki, formerly known as Lolita, will finally leave the Miami Aquarium and return to her home waters in the Pacific Northwest. Our co-anchor Louis Aguirre has been following the story from the very beginning and joins us live with the delicate detail.
As the rain came down on Tokite, the orca living in captivity at the Miami Aquarium for 53 years, big news about her future was being announced at a ballroom in downtown Miami.
I think we can do it.
I hadn't heard of Lolita until the other day, but what set me back in my chair, she is something like 57 years old, and her mother is over 100 years old. And by the way, we did a story about longevity and what scientists are discovering about the amazing lifespans of whales. Some live over 200 years. The hope is that some of that can rub off on us humans. And we continue our segment from last week. It's about how to handle change and what Peter De Silva learned.
Well, they do say change is inevitable, right? So you need to use it to your advantage.
He opened up my eyes on how to embrace change in my life. But before we go any further, let's head into Mimi's kitchen to see what she's brewing up in there.
Today, we're going to make some appetizers, mushrooms.
Ooh, that sounds good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We love mushrooms. Who doesn't? So I got some baby portabella mushrooms, baby bella. Okay. I cleaned them with a damp cloth. They're all clean. And I took all the insides, like you see here. The inside, I took it with a little spoon that I have around so I can, do it without breaking up. So we're going to stuff this with cream cheese, soft cream cheese. You put for 16 ounces of mushroom, you put 4 ounces of cream cheese, quarter cup of Parmesan cheese. I love Parmesan. You don't have to. And then 1/4 cup of sharp cheddar. Okay, put it in there.
Did you cut that up?
Yeah, I did. And then some white scallions. Okay, you put the white part in there, inside. All right. A little paprika. Put paprika.
And these are going to be stuffed mushrooms.
Oh yeah, this is the stuffing that I'm making. Okay. I hope you can see it. You see it, right? And then a pinch of salt, not too much. There, like that. Kosher salt always. And then a little black pepper. And stir, stir, stir. You stir all this. You stir all this. Ding, ding, ding. And you know, you can add turkey bacon or bacon to it. This time we just put cheese in it, cheese and scallions. It's delicious.
Do you have to cook this?
Oh yeah.
Oh, it's 50 minutes cooked.
And then, no, this is, we're gonna cook it. Of course, we're gonna cook the mushrooms in the air fryer. I love it.
Air fryers are good.
I love it. So the air fryer, I preheated already the air fryer, 360 for like 5 minutes. Now it should be all nice. I'm gonna stuff my mushrooms. See?
You want to do all that now, or maybe when we come back?
Yeah, I'm just gonna put this, and then I'm gonna stuff one very quick, and then I'll finish this by myself, and then come back to show you how. So you see, you put this inside like a pro.
Like a what?
Like a professional.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Like that. Like you're making an ice cream cone.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
All right, and then you tap it so it can go all inside. There you go. And you make the others. So I'll be right back. When I finish all this, I'm gonna show you how I put it in the air fryer.
We'll be right back.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mimi. We'll see you soon. Also today, we are going to begin something new. It's about making new friends. And you know, as we get older, it's not easy. And researchers say our circle of friends can help us live longer.
To all of you, Samantha, this is such a good topic for Glamour to take on. Why did you want to get into it?
It's a great topic. I think what we did is we dug into the fact that friendships are really important for your mental well-being.
Yeah.
They help your self-worth, your self-confidence. They help you avoid unhealthy things. And they also really, really good bonds help you through trauma a lot of the time. And it's essential for people, even from a very young age, right up until older ages.
What got my attention is that researchers show having friendships can actually help us live even better than a good diet or exercise. So my friend and collaborator, author Darla Noble, and I, we started exploring the importance of friendship together and how to make new friends, especially as we get older. It's kind of sad to read some of the comments on my Facebook friendship group. Nancy says, I haven't made a new friend in over 10 years. Kevin commented to me, neither have I. Friends since my wife had passed away, I haven't made any. And Lori commented, it was so much easier when she had small children. So Darla and I got together to talk about it.
Research shows, Andy, that 3 to 5 close friends and a community of 10 to 15, and then acquaintances. We really don't have room in our life for more than around 40 people that we, you know, and I want you to stop and think, if you were to count the people that you consider your close friends and allies, would there be more than 3 to 5? No. Not counting your immediate family.
That's right.
We need to have those people in our life, but it's not going to happen automatically.
We don't have the answer for making new friends any easier, but speaking of Facebook, we started a new group called Making Friends. You can visit it here, and you can also find out more about what Darla is up to. Last week, I spoke to sex therapist Dr. Lori Beth Bisbey. Since most of us here are no longer in our 20s and 30s, sex and intimacy can take on a much different role in our life, if you will. She just happens to be about the same age as many of us here today. Let's listen. I learned a lot.
I myself am just 60 years old. And so I talk a lot about sex after 50.
Well, fantastic. That's where we are. And I know I've interviewed an awful lot, not a lot, I've interviewed a few people who identify themselves as sex therapists, but it doesn't feel that they go quite as far as people over 55 in how they engage in sex and intimacy. I guess that's the proper way to phrase it. What are you able to tell, about that, about folks over 55?
So there's a lot of myths around sex dying off and becoming less important over the age of 50, particularly myths generated in women, which are like, once the menopause happens, you don't want to have sex. It's not an issue anymore. When in fact, a lot of people have much better sex lives after 50. And this has to do with people understanding what they want and being able to communicate that. So if they're in good relationships, and it's a little bit harder if you're not, and you're trying to date and find a partner afterwards, but people do, and they successfully find new partners. But if you're in committed relationships and they're good relationships, the communication is better. It's actually easier to get your needs met than often it was when you were younger, where you were much more concerned with what people thought about you than you were about what you were enjoying.
It makes sense. So much of what we hear about, sex and intimacy is from the standpoint of people in their 20 and 35-year-olds, and that makes sense, of course, to me at least. But is that leaving people out who are 55 plus? I think you kind of referred to that a moment ago.
Absolutely. Yes, it's important to talk to the 20 to 35-year-olds, but the reality is people have sex up until the day they die. I have a partner who's 76 who's actively having sex, and I'm polyamorous, so I have another partner who's 65, almost 66, also actively having sex, and and actually have active, intense desire, possibly more desire, unconflicted desire than they did when they were younger. That's not unusual. I've had clients in their 90s. And so I think it's a shame that we don't talk about this, because there are physical challenges that happen when you're older, but there are also ways to explore and ways around and ways to expand your pleasure. But you need that information in order to do it. And because we don't talk about it, oftentimes people don't get the information that they need.
And that one word you use is unconflicted sex. I think could you go into that a little bit?
Well, unconflicted because people feel less ashamed of their sexual desire. By this point in their lives, they know they have desire. They've accepted they have desire. Sometimes they've accepted their differences, their kinks, their foibles. They've accepted their bodies. They're not trying. Procreation is off the table. When they're having sex, they're having it in order to have physical intimacy, emotional intimacy, or just have fun.
I do have a light new round, just quick questions and quick answers. Okay. So when and why did you decide to become a sex therapist?
So I always knew that I was different sexually from the time I was very young. And when I had the first opportunity to go to therapy, the therapist hadn't a clue what to say to me. And so I had a negative experience from that standpoint. And I wanted to be able to help people who were somewhat different.
Now, tell me, I'm assuming this, but tell me about some of the awkward reactions that you've had when introducing yourself to a stranger. They ask about what do you do for a living?
Oh my God. So either they tell me their whole life story and every problem they've ever had. And now that I'm on a television show, people stop me in the street and start to tell me their story, which is always fun.
I can imagine.
Or they're just like, they don't know what to say. I live in the United Kingdom, and there is a segment of the population in in Great Britain that are quite straight-laced and conservative. And, it's like, oh, what do you do for a living? Well, I work with people who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender. I also work with, heterosexual couples who want to engage in fetishes and kink, or and then you just like, you see their faces, like they're like,
yeah.
I mean, so be careful about the way in which I introduce myself, but it's also important that I tell them the kinds of stuff I write about them, because they go to my website, they get shocked.
Yes, and I guess maybe at this point nothing surprises you, but there must have been some point in your development in this career that you were surprised by what you learned.
Oh yeah, I mean, at this point, I've been doing this for 35 years, and so nothing really does surprise me. But I do remember some of the things that did. I do remember the first time that I had somebody who came and said that they were into pony play, and I was like, pony? What's that? And they were like, well, like I take on the role of a pony and I wear these boots, and and it was like, okay, all right. So it was really interesting to learn about that and understood more about it. But like the first time somebody said that to me, I was sort of like, oh, okay, never heard of this before. There's been a lot of things where people have said things. One of the most shocking things was to have somebody who was in their 70s who'd never managed to have intercourse because they couldn't figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, and whose information about sex they'd come up in an incredibly restrictive religious family who had no information about sex, and their wife had no information about sex, and they had never consummated their marriage, and they were in their 70s, and they were like, please help, we understand there's more to life, and basic sex education information.
Now I'm going to ask you to be a historian here. How has sex changed over the years?
I think what we see and what's expressed and what's public has changed over the years. But all of the stuff that everybody gets up to, they got up to hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago. Like nothing is new under the sun. I think what's changed is particularly with the internet, access to information and the ability to meet more people like you. A wise person said, if it exists, somebody's turned on by it. That was before the internet. After the internet, the phrase went, if it exists, somebody's turned on by it, and now there's an internet community devoted to it. I think that's one of the things that's changed, is that there are these, spaces where there's vast communities of people that it would have been quiet. It's not that it didn't exist, it just would have been quiet in the past. I do think that boundaries have changed as well, and sometimes not in a good way. So I do think it's important that we're able to be authentic and open about our differences and be accepted for our differences, but we don't need to tell everybody the nitty-gritty. and I think that people sometimes don't get that. They think that they need to tell everybody the nitty-gritty and everybody needs to hear it and accept it. That's not really necessary. But I think that's part of a learning curve. When people have been told they can't be themselves for a really long time, once they're allowed to, they really want to be vocal about it.
And are we saying that it's something that can remain private?
No, I'm saying some things can remain private. Like you can know about my sexuality without knowing exactly how I like to have sex, unless you're somebody that's going to be my partner. I mean, obviously, if you're a writer, then they know things about at least your mind because you write it down. But for the ordinary person, like you can say to somebody, I'm bisexual. I'm interested in men and women, right? Sure. But you don't have to say, I like to give head and I like to do this. Like that's unnecessary unless you're actually going to sleep with the person. And it's sort of understanding where that line is.
And you mentioned boundaries a moment ago. What rules apply to sex and intimacy?
I think it's really important that consent is the basis parts of everything. And that we make no assumptions about consent. Just because somebody's our partner and we've been doing it this way with them forever and a day doesn't mean that they're always consenting. And so that's the first boundary, is making sure you clearly get consent. Also, that we have space for our own individual fantasy life, and that we don't really have to share that with anybody. We can if we want to, but that it's not cheating to have your internal fantasies that you don't share with your partner. It's just your internal life, and that makes us richer people.
Well, listen, your advice is something that I'm sure many people want to get more of. How can you direct, and what's the best information and where to go?
So the easiest way to get in touch with me is if you go to my website, drloribethbisbey.com, and fill in the contact form. If you're somebody that wants to hire me for something in the media, there's my PR person there. And if you want me to act or professionally speak, there's an agent there. But you fill in the contact form and I get that directly, and I will email you or text you, depending on what information you're giving me, to answer a question. I limit how many questions I answer for free, because otherwise I'd spend my entire day answering questions. So if you've got a question and what you really want is a detailed response to your personal issue, in my shop on my website, there are two things. One is to get an email response, and you can purchase that. The other is to get a video response, and you can purchase that, and you'll get a long and detailed response. But you can throw it in an email, and sometimes, I answer questions on my podcast, so I pick through them and I'll answer, either the question that's come up most in the last week, or the one that's related to what I'm doing, or just because my mood strikes me and I want to answer that question. So you sometimes get answers that way. My podcast is the A to Z or A to Z of Sex, which you can get on Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, all the major places. I've been doing it weekly since 2016, so there's been a lot of topics covered. I will give you a language warning. I swear like a trooper, nothing is off the table. We are honest and we're open, and I've had some wonderful people on, and so for some people the talk is pretty intense, but every topic you can imagine we're covering. So that's another really good way to find out what I'm doing. But really the easiest way is if you go through my website and fill in the contact form, or email me directly. That's the quickest way to get in touch with me.
Perfect. And the one thing I like to ask most of my guests, not all the time, but yours is probably a good one, is what might be a takeaway or something that you want to leave people with?
We're sexual human beings our whole lives, from birth to death. And so it behooves us as older people to live that and to really embody that. Our bodies are amazing instruments and do wonderful things. So if you have trouble with orgasm, if you have trouble enjoying physical pleasure, if you've never worked out issues around that, do it now. Don't say it's passed you by. I don't care what age you are. Do it now. Don't miss out on the richness and beauty of that part of life.
I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Her name is Dr. Lori Beth Bisbey.
All right, we're back.
We're back.
We're back. I'm gonna put some espelette, which is a French hot pepper. I cannot live without. My air fryer is preheated. I'm just gonna spray a little olive oil like that. All right, and put them here and cook them for 8 minutes. So it's gonna be so
You love that air fryer.
good. I love this air fryer. It makes my life easier. You know?
And it tastes good too.
It tastes good, and you don't have to put a lot of oil or anything. That's what I like about it. There you go. See how I did this? You can see it. So now it's gonna go to the air fryer, right? And
so
then
we'll be back after
yep,
that?
we'll be back when it's after 8 minutes.
Okay,
all
we'll be
right,
back.
all right, all right.
We'll be back to make a final check in Mimi's kitchen. In our travel segment today, we begin our visit with one of the 11 magical California gold rush towns you should absolutely visit. It's Sutter Creek. And the force behind much of the gold rush then was John Sutter.
John Sutter moved away for a short time and returned with a small crew. He said, "I broke up the camp and started on the march further south and located my next camp on Sutter Creek, now in Amador County, and thought that I should be there alone," he said. "The work was going on well for a while until 3 or 4 traveling grog shops," he said, "surrounded me at from 1/2 to 10 miles distance from the camp." He says the gold was taken to these places for drinking and gambling, etc., and then the following day they were sick and unable to work. Shortly thereafter, Sutter moved out of Sutter Creek and back to his fort.
Although plenty of gold was found here, gold-bearing quartz deposits were discovered in 1851, and mining those deposits for gold became the mainstay of the local economy for many years. With the prosperity brought by quartz mining, Sutter Creek became a boom town. And by 1932, the Central Eureka mine began in 1869, had reached the 2,300-foot level. By 1939, it was the best-paying mine in Sutter Creek. The mine's continued operations until 1942, when most gold mines were closed for manpower reasons during World War II.
Sutter's Fort State Historic Park sits in Midtown Sacramento. From 1839 to 1849, Sutter's Fort was the economic center of the first permanent European colonial settlement in California's Central Valley.
Next week, we plan to do something a little bit different, but we'll have to just wait and see. We'll find out then. And finally now, for the past 2 weeks, we have been exploring the meaning of change in life. And we've been talking to Peter De Silva. Now, he wrote a book. It's called Taking Stock, 10 Life and Leadership Principles from My Seat at the Table.
It's a process, not an event. And so over the last 61 years of my existence on this earth, I have changed, I have grown, I have developed, and I've made plenty of mistakes along the way too. But the most important thing, I think, is that you're always moving forward. I have a saying that you always want to look through the windshield, not the rearview mirror. The rearview mirror is for, it's interesting. It's like what happened in the past, and we should learn from it. But at the end of the day, there's no future in the past. There just is no future in the past. And so you have to look ahead. You have to put aside the things that maybe the disappointments you've had and the things that may have been somewhat less than you wanted them to be, so you can just move forward. Because to do otherwise is standing still. And if you're standing still, guess what? Somebody else is walking right past you.
I didn't warn you about this, but I do a little lightning round, just a question with a quick answer. Are you up for that?
Let's do it.
Well, you talk about self-sacrifice. How does self-sacrifice work for me, let's say?
I think it's looking at any situation and saying, I'm going to put the interests of the group ahead of my own, the interest of my family ahead of my own, the interest of my community ahead of my own. That's what self-sacrifice is all about.
That's simple. That's a simple definition. And what does change mean to you?
Change means that you're moving from one point to another point. I don't know exactly where that second point's going to be and how I'm going to end up there, but I'm willing and able and comfortable moving from point A to point B.
Thank you so much, Peter. His book was just released, Taking Stock, 10 Life and Leadership Principles from My Seat at the Table. And here's some more information. Now, before we go, join me in Mimi's kitchen.
Oh, gosh, that's gorgeous.
Check
I like the
this
look of it.
out.
I like the look.
Oh,
It's beautiful. It's got a
I
nice brown
love
to
it. Yes.
And my goodness.
Oh, wow. So,
Show it up
Richard,
a little. Oh,
hot, hot, hot.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I can,
You've got hot hands.
yep, I can do the hot.
Uh-huh.
There you go.
Uh-huh.
So now I'm gonna,
They haven't.
woo, that's
I
so
like
hot.
I like the color of them.
Don't try this at home, okay? You have to pick them up with something.
Yeah.
Let me rinse my fingers, please.
Okay.
Thank you. There you go. Mm-hmm.
See, you needed me here.
Oh, yes, of course. I always need you all the time. Yes. So you put all here. You can serve this on a bed of arugula or spinach or anything green, but you don't have to because they're just appetizers.
Mm-hmm.
So let's do this. I'm going to try to work with my left hand here.
Do you want a towel or anything?
No, I got it. It's very hot, so please don't do it like I'm doing it because I can take the heat.
Okay.
Some people can't. Okay, this one I'm just gonna leave it there.
Here.
Uh-huh.
Out of the way.
Sorry. So you put, remember the green scallions that I left behind? Just put them on top.
A little color.
Like
That's
that.
the way you're spreading it out.
Yeah, like that. And of course, always zest of lemon. I love lemon, and it's gonna take it to the next level. Every time you put one in your mouth and there is a little zest of lemon in it, it's gonna be fabulous. So check this out. How cool is this? It took me 8 minutes for cooking, 2 minutes for preparing this, and you will impress your guest with the beautiful, beautiful
Show it up
mushroom.
Here so
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, that's so nice.
Can you see it?
Uh-huh.
There you go. So, Andy,
Okay. The
you be
ultimate test.
careful now. It's
hot.
super hot.
Oh.
Hot, hot. Oh. I told you it's hot. You have to leave it. You have to leave it. He can't. He loves mushrooms. So he's suffering now, but he's okay. You have to let it sit at least 5 minutes before you start eating it, okay? So don't do what Andy did. He did. It's okay. You're not gonna die. All right, until next time, you guys. See you later.
Thanks, Mimi, and thank you so much for tuning in to Let's Talk Food Travel Live Squared. If you enjoyed this episode or you learned something new, I want to tell you 3 ways that you can support the show and keep Let's Talk Food Travel Live Squared going. And number 1, get yourself subscribed. Every week I am bringing on the influencers and the people who can teach you something or have something interesting to share. So just take a moment and hit that subscribe button. And then number 2, this is really the ultimate way to support Let's Talk Food Travel Live Squared, and it really takes less than a minute. You can write something short and sweet like, I love the show. It has changed your life, or something you learned from it. Now, I am not exaggerating that I read reviews every single day, and every single one, whether short or long, it means everything to me. And the more reviews means the higher we rank on all those algorithms, which means bigger guests. So take a minute to leave a review. And 3, share the show with your friends. Just hit that share button. I am eternally grateful. And thank you so much for supporting this show. I will see you again next Tuesday for another episode of Let's Talk Food Travel Live Squared.